the more that you're showing up and being authentic and really coming from a place of wanting to help other people, you're going to end up attracting like-minded people like that. And so at the end of the day, I don't know about you, but I'd rather surround myself with people who are similar than not, because that's, again, how we continue to grow, make change, and impact.
Today, we get to speak with Jennifer Bulkley. She's a holistic consultant and an audio impactor. She's the owner of JenX Enterprises LLC and Break the Ice Consulting. Now, evolving past a structured, self-built corporate company for a new mission, pursuing a life of freedom and self-authorization in order to help others break free of their own illusions and lead an authentic and heart-decisive life. Now, how did I meet her? I met her through 30 Days of Challenge that we do on LinkedIn every year. It was really exciting learning about her through this journey as she recorded videos every single day. Now, she has over a decade of entrepreneurial experience building and scaling multiple businesses from scratch. Expert in a sales and selling profession and dedicated self-development researcher, practitioner, and soul shifter. And she brought all of those qualities out in every single video that she creates on LinkedIn. So let's hear her story as she shares her journey in launching these multiple companies. Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. We're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life. Want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So Jennifer and I met through the 30 Days of Videos Challenge that was put together a couple of years ago by Rob House, and then he restarted it this year in 2020. And we got a whole new batch of new leaders, new entrepreneurs jumping in here, taking the challenge, getting uncomfortable, and then getting comfortable in front of the camera and creating videos on LinkedIn. So Jennifer, it's been really awesome following your journey, watching your videos day by day, and how comfortable you've become in front of the camera.
Yeah, it was a very humbling experience because I definitely was uncomfortable in the beginning. It's just one of those things where, as an entrepreneur and a salesperson by trade, you can go in and you can close these deals and you can be in front of all kinds of people, and I have to be in front of my employees and my clients. So public speaking in that sense is natural.
Yeah.
But once that camera gets turned on
Mm-hmm.
and it's just you and you're just speaking from say a personal thought versus something that's, orchestrated, is such a different feeling that it just puts you on the spot. But again, when you have, in our particular case with the 30 Days of Videos Challenge, what caught my eye was the core values of the group. So when your cause is to provide encouragement, education, and strength to other people, it allows you the courage to get through I'm shy to be on camera part of it, and don't worry about it, because at the end of the day, it's about the message that you're going to provide other people. So definitely
Absolutely.
a great way to get your feet wet.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's that the values and the entire idea behind it, I think that's really powerful because you're not only getting uncomfortable, but you're also sharing something that you're passionate about. And anytime we start talking about something that we're passionate about, no matter if you're an introvert or, somebody who doesn't speak, you immediately don't even think about that and you just jump on and start talking about what you're passionate about. And it's really, really amazing experience to go through that and that journey.
Exactly. Yep. And then you start deciding, more of your cultivation of what impact you want to have on other people in a more, robust way. So it's not just encouragement and education, but it's also about, getting them to think past just the surface level part of feeling encouraged. Why, what tools do you have to continue on that journey for yourself? So for my big thing is I like to just pass on as many tools or tricks of the trade that I've experienced that I think will help somebody else,
Yeah,
which is fun. I mean,
mm-hmm.
that's really fun because you're still learning yourself as well. So you're like,
Yes.
oh, I just brought that thought even further than I initially anticipated in this little message. Holy cow, so you're learning just as much as, say, you're trying to teach somebody else something.
Yeah, you're right. The more you teach something, the more you learn yourself because you're looking at it from a different perspective now. Like, sure,
Mm-hmm.
I can drive a car, sure, I can ride a bike, but how do you teach somebody who's never driven a car or who's never ridden a bike or who's never been a beekeeper or who's never been
Yeah.
in a business owner, right? So all of these things, when you teach, you're like, all right, what would I do? Like it's like writing a recipe down. Like, sure, I know how to bake a grilled cheese sandwich, but when you write down the recipe for it, like, okay, I gotta think about it really well.
Yep, exactly. And then, like, the interesting thing with this group was that and just a quick backstory is from probably like late December to right up around the time of the quote unquote pandemic when we had the quarantine, I was actually unplugged for like 3 months. I mean,
Oh wow.
I went in and I made sure I engaged with some of my top favorites that were still giving me inspiration and encouragement regardless, because I didn't want to lose touch with some very key people that I highly, highly respect on the
Mm-hmm.
platform, sort of like
Yeah.
the virtual mentors.
Yeah.
But like otherwise, I was really just digressed from it because I was focusing on some projects personally that I wanted to do. And then I thought, my gosh, like the state of affairs, I better get on there and just see if there's anything I can do to help other people. Like, let's check in with humanity and see if there's anything I can do.
Yeah.
And like, you can do that in your own community, and that's great. But when you can do it globally, like on a social media platform, then you're able to really see what's going on. And so right away, that 30 days of video challenge with those core values was exactly what I was looking for
Yeah.
as a way to break in to try and help, what was going on.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I just took a like 3 month break from social media. Now I'm going to start right out with videos every single day. Like, it's just like, but when stuff like that happens, at least for me in particular, I don't look at it as like a coincidence. That was,
Mm-hmm.
meant to be.
It
That
was
one of
meant to
the
be.
first things I saw was this kind of informal invitation from Rob
Yeah.
to jump in there. And it's like, wow.
What's really awesome about what you just mentioned about showing up on video and showing up on social media to inspire others and teach others what you know. For the longest time, because social media has been around for what, a
I
decade
don't
and a
know.
half almost, right?
Yeah, probably at
Maybe
least,
longer
yeah.
if you count AOL and
Like
MSN
MySpace
Messenger
and
and
right.
MySpace, right? So what's been happening since Instagram and Facebook is people have been showing off on social media.
Hmm.
Like, oh, I have the better blah blah blah. But I don't think that matters anymore. I think the more thing that matters now is showing up
Yeah,
rather than
absolutely.
showing off. And then the more you show up in any space with your heart and with your mindset, I think the more followers, the more vibes, the more tribe that you're going to build around yourself. And I think
Yeah,
that's
I
what I've
think,
been seeing too.
yeah, that's a great observation, and I would agree with you. I think like the more that you're showing up and being authentic and really coming from a place of wanting to help other people, you're going to end up attracting like-minded people like that. And so at the end of the day, I don't know about you, but I'd rather surround myself with people who are similar than not, because that's
Hmm.
again how we continue to grow, make change, and impact.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is for me, is attracting people that I want to be around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Virtually, obviously more virtual, but
Hmm.
still.
But being virtual or physical, right? The
Yeah,
mindset is still, it's the same. You connect on a different level. You're able
yeah,
to see the values, and all of those things come to fruition. The other thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if it's lucky or if it's destined. Same time around December, I got invited to this group, or joined this Facebook group called Unconventional Leaders. And back then there were like only 500 people in this group. Now there are like
Hmm.
1,500 people in this
Oh,
group.
wow.
And what they started doing is they started doing coffee chats every day at 4 o'clock. So people are at home and they're like, all right, where do we do? We have nothing to do, getting depressed. Well, coffee chats with other people that are also sitting at home, but sitting in front of their computers. So we started doing these, and I started showing up every day and connecting, and it's a really amazing place to hang out, like talking with other people, showing up. And when we did the few Zoom calls with 30 days, I think it felt the same thing. You connect on a different level. So that's
Hmm.
been pretty amazing, and it's continuing to a point that every Tuesday I'm doing a tech talk on Tech Talk Tuesdays, where I talk about
Okay.
technology on here, and people are coming in asking me questions, and it it also, like, you just show up authentically of what you're passionate and what you love, and people will start responding and asking you questions in that area. You just gotta make it happen.
Wow, I really love that.
Consistent.
That's so cool. Now, is that coffee chat still happening?
It is actually. There's
Oh, that's
one
cool.
today at 4:30, and they're going to be talking about how to be creative with your content or something around that matter.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's evolution right there.
it is. It is. And if you want, I can send you an invite to it also, and
Yeah,
you
I would
can
love that.
come jump in. Awesome. So tell us a version of your journey that no one's heard of before.
Um, well, that no one's heard of. Like, you mean as far as that I've broadcasted?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because obviously, when you're in front of a client or something like that, a prospect, they do tend to ask you about, how, because my company's privately held, so I
Yeah.
built it from scratch. So a lot of times
Yes.
people do kind of want to hear a little bit like, well, so how'd you end up doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess as far as like what I haven't really told people, is, how do I put this? So basically, I was working in sales. This is after my career in law enforcement, although I was still
Mm-hmm.
working part time as a police officer.
Yeah.
Um, and I got into the sales role, and I loved it so much that I just decided, this sounds silly, but why would I sit here and make all this money for somebody else
Yeah.
when I could make it for myself?
Mm-hmm.
you know, so it was that spark. It was kind of like that light bulb that goes off. Um, Now, where I was living is not my hometown. So I had moved out of my hometown and was living in a completely different area. So I didn't have family or anything like that around,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have any money whatsoever. So the biggest thing for me was I thought you had to have like 30 grand to start a business, that you had to have a couple years of market research. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought of it as this very more academic way.
Yeah.
And then I went to a conference in Rochester, New York, that was put on by Robert Kiyosaki's team.
Yeah.
So when, partway through that conference, just my complete mindset changed. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
there is no magic way to start something. You just literally have to start it. So
Yeah.
you do have to just sort of like jump off the cliff and build the plane on the way down.
Mm-hmm.
So with $1,200 credit card limit on a Capital One card,
Yeah.
just started with advertising in newspaper print. This is 12 years ago, so that was
Yeah.
still a way to advertise,
Mm-hmm.
and it was pretty cheap. And then how I got started was actually more bartering services. So I got on the radio, the local radio station, and they
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to advertise my business while I provided services at the radio station, which was cleaning.
Nice.
Because because originally my business partner and I, we started the company based on a bet,
Mm-hmm.
where he was like, I bet you we can, have a successful company with like no money and everything. And I was like, okay, that's crazy. And he was like, what do you want to do? He goes, let's do landscaping. I'm like, no, I don't want to run a lawnmower. I don't know how to fix a lawnmower. I'm like, I'm not a mechanical, like, as far as that kind of goes. And so I
Yeah.
go, what about cleaning? Because I grew up in near Lake Placid, New York, and I
Mm-hmm.
worked at a 5-star resort, which I was a housekeeper. So I
Mm.
learned how to clean with a white glove standard, how to
Yeah.
use, this is almost 20 years ago now,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
back then, being in the Adirondacks like that, everything was about being green.
Mm.
So from the gate, I was like, we're going to do it green cleaning. I know a system and I know how to teach other people. So
Nice.
sometimes it's not so much about what you want to do, is what do you know to start
Yes.
something? What knowledge do you have that you can build off of?
Exactly.
Well, then it all just kind of explodes from there, because one thing builds onto another, to where all of a sudden it goes from, I just want to have a turnkey operation and get out of the rat race, to I'm affecting lives by, infection control. And now I'm in a commercial space.
Wow. Wow. That's beautiful.
Um, yeah. So I think like the biggest part of the whole thing of my story, as far as like personally, is just really having those wake up calls, not understanding from the very beginning what it was going to turn out to be
Mm-hmm.
along the way, is just very fascinating. But it was a ton of hard work. Like you look back and it's like, now I wouldn't even do the things I did then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't. I put 100,000 miles on my vehicle in 1 year. I don't ever, ever, ever. Now I try and drive as loose as I possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so there's things you look back that you do that I just would never do now, but I'm so grateful that I did.
Yeah.
Um, and so when you're going to set up a second business, which I'm setting up two, I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to start two businesses now. You
Nice.
learn all the things that you don't want to do again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And you note them down like, okay, we did it this way. It didn't it worked, but let's do it better going
Yeah.
forward. That's awesome.
Yeah. And yeah, it's really, really fun to have that insight, and then to keep learning,
It's almost
never
like
stop
asking
learning.
it's almost like asking somebody, "Hey, how do you run?" Well, you just stand up and you start running, you know. No, but how do
Yep.
you really run? Like, can I take a
Yeah.
course on running, right? So
No.
that's a really great point. Just start at the starting point.
Hmm.
Use what you have, use the knowledge that you have and teach it or, apply it basically.
Yep. And then
That's
as you
beautiful.
learn and grow,
Yeah.
then everything starts to transform naturally.
Yeah.
Like this leads to that, and then before you know it, because I'll tell you what, when you're doing the things like putting 100,000 miles on the car, and you're
Mhm.
missing dinner with your children, and
Yeah.
you're doing all these things, and it's this hustle grind, what you end up realizing in your mind, and this is your mind, because your mind has to do this in order to sustain its energy, is you will find why you're doing it. So your why completely changes along in the journey, from my original why of just financial security to, I'm doing this because I know at the end of the day this is eventually going to help a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise, why would you do it? It does not enough. A
Yeah.
simple driver like financial is not enough
It's not enough.
to
It's
maintain that kind of steam.
yeah. It's great to get you started though. It's like
Right. Oh,
okay.
it's a yeah, great
Like
motivator to get started.
'cause
Ego is a freaking lifesaver if you want to start something.
yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I say you have to have a special relationship with your ego, especially
Yeah.
early on. It really does serve a purpose. It
It's
it kickstarts you.
I think it's almost like a flint, right? But the flint's not going to keep the fire going,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So,
Exactly. Mhm.
wow.
Yep. So
So many
yeah, and I mean,
analogies.
I know, but I think that's like the biggest thing, is like people are, oh well, I don't want to look like I'm, some kind of doing this for ego or pride, or doing it for money. Well, maybe you are. It's
Maybe
better
you
to just
are.
be
Maybe you
honest.
should.
Better to
Yes.
be honest about that and say, this is my initial reason, because it's going to evolve over time anyways. If you're a decent person anyways, it'll come out, in the end.
Yeah. No, I
I
love
mean, I
it.
certainly, yeah.
That's beautiful.
So,
So, last week we had a conversation and we were running parallel lines around beekeeping and how if there's not enough growth and if there's not enough room to grow for the queen bee, they abandon the hive. So you have to keep an eye on them and keep giving them frames so they have enough
Hmm.
room to lay the eggs and be able to grow that hive. So you had mentioned something about you're looking to start something new, and I think you mentioned earlier also. So walk us a little bit uh, around that, or about that. What's
Okay,
going
sure.
on?
So, well, basically, 12 years into this company, it's gotten to the point where my particular position is 100% turnkey and basically automated. Other than my, say, expertise knowledge wise, I've created the position because I operated as chief operating officer, which is different than just the owner. Even though I made decisions with my partner, co-founder, like an owner, at the end of the day, at some point, either you excuse yourself from that role because there's better qualified people, and your company's gotten to the point where it needs the better qualified person for that role to keep going to the next level.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I just realized, well, I've gotten to the point where I can turn this over to somebody else, and I want to at the same time. And it's not necessarily burnout or anything like that, because I'm still passionate about the industry. It's a personal choice. I've got other things that I want to do. And when it comes to being an entrepreneur, you can only box yourself into a certain role just so long before you naturally are going to fight against that structure. At least for
Wow.
me personally, and I think that goes,
Yeah.
I think I can speak for a lot of entrepreneurs as far as like personality goes. You have to have the structure to make it work, and that's great. But at the end of the day, your creative side wants to keep going, and your
Yeah.
purposes and your whys change. So the company culture is done. That's built. That purpose and that why will continue on without me for
Yeah.
however long. That's done and been there. So now I want to move on to something else with a different purpose and a different why, which is to impact people on a more personal level, through basically coaching, and podcasting. So I want to start, I'm going to be starting my own podcast and my own
Nice.
platform, and the platform that I'm launching is going to be basically about self-discovery and self-development on a more personal level, on
Hmm.
one-to-one,
So,
you know, and that'll probably evolve eventually too, but
of course.
that's the starting point.
So, how did you come to this conclusion that you want to move out and that this is and this is what you want to do? Because you did mention, our whys change over time
Hmm.
because we grow as a person. We, you know, technically, our bodies are not the same. I think was it every 7 weeks or every 7 years? I can't remember, but cells in our bodies
Hmm.
change over. I think it's 7 years. Every 7 years, basically, every single cell in our body is brand new. It's never been there
Yep.
before,
Yeah,
right?
I think I
So,
heard that too.
so how did you come to the conclusion that this is what you wanted to do? What inspired these motivations?
Well, truthfully, it's been about a year and a half
Mhm.
decision.
Okay.
So it wasn't like I woke up and gave it 2 weeks to think about, and then it's been about the last year and a half of my life.
Hmm.
And I think part of it too was the pandemic.
Yeah.
COVID-19 had some kind of kick in the butt,
Hmm.
where it was like, I can't get a when here's how my mind operates, and this is more of a spiritual thing. When I can't get my head out of something, so when something keeps recurring back to me over and over again,
Yeah.
and you can't ignore it, then it just becomes sort of like you have to then make the decision. You can't just keep sitting there in like turmoil and like wondering and wondering.
Yeah.
So I guess it would sort of start with getting some virtual mentorship
Hmm.
through LinkedIn specifically,
Yeah.
meeting people on that platform that were more experienced than me, that were just great at relating how you can inspire others, you can encourage others through your own story, through your own knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and together, right? So, I just started thinking about this over and over again, and I'm like a serial, like addicted to podcast listening because it's such a great way to get education
Yeah.
and get ideas, and it sparks creativity. So I just decided, I really like to have my own podcast so I can reach more people
Mm-hmm.
for, messages, education. And then just seeing that there's this whole other world out there to explore than just the confines of this corporate world that I built for myself. Yeah, I built the corporation,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I'm not a corporate person by any means. So to me, it's a little, after a while, it's a little bit of an imposter syndrome. Like, I don't want to be in that wheel. And
That
my
totally makes sense.
strengths,
Yeah.
my strengths, when we break down what strengths are, which this again goes back to this whole last year and a half scenario where
Mm-hmm.
a year and a half ago, almost, I would say a little less than a year and a half ago, I hired a personal coach,
Mm-hmm.
Kurt Mercadante,
Nice. Yeah, he's
with
awesome.
Freedom Lifestyle. And so once we uncovered what my strengths were, and I realized that a lot of my strengths I wasn't necessarily getting to use the way I wanted to. So deciding to quit corporate and pass that baton on to somebody else, and then just dive into something that's more personally fulfilling, which is utilizing my strengths, which is things like what we're doing right now,
yeah,
like interacting,
that's
connectivity, communication,
yeah.
uh, adapting, belief.
That's really powerful, and I love it because so I the reason I started my podcast because I just love creating content. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna create a podcast, and for the longest time, I had a podcast in 2012 with two of my cousins, and we recorded like 4 episodes. It was a pain in the butt because they were in California, I was in Colorado. We had a time difference, but I really loved the process. I loved the conversation that we were having, and that ended. Then I moved out, and I was like, all right, I want to create a podcast still. And then earlier in 2018, a friend of mine reached out, and he's like, hey, I want to start a podcast. And I've been working with him for a decade now and managing his websites and whatnot. And he's like, hey, I want to start a website. What do you know? Or I want to start a podcast. What do you know about it? So I started doing research, ran into this app called Anchor.fm, where you can record podcasts on your phone. I was like, holy smokes, this is awesome. Around the same time, I was also reading Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk. And as soon as I finished reading the book, it just, I was like, I just gotta do it now. So I started, and I have so many different hobbies. I've been talking about different hobbies to my colleagues all the time. Oh, I'm into cycling. Oh, I'm doing woodworking. Oh, I'm doing beekeeping. Oh, I'm gonna be, building a farm bot where it'll farm itself. Right. So I'm talking about all these technologies, all these hobbies, and being a Kickstarter backer. And they're like, dude, what's your new hobby this week? And I was like, it's podcasting. I'm gonna start a podcast. I'm gonna talk about all my hobbies, starting with beekeeping. And I was just done with beekeeping class also. So I was like, I'm going to talk about beekeeping. So I just started the podcast, start talking to myself, recording it, and just didn't even market it, just because I just loved the process of doing that work, doing that creation. And what you mentioned about, creating the podcast and having access to an online coach. Sure, I didn't hire a coach, but I was reading a lot of books on entrepreneurship, following Gary Vaynerchuk, Pat Flynn, and all these people that are doing some amazing things. And for the longest time, I was stuck on the beach. And I'm looking at all these people on these yachts and boats. I'm like, oh my God, how do I get to that boat? Well, you got to jump in the water, right? So I finally took the dive. I was like, all right, I don't care if I don't know how to swim. I'll figure it out on the way. So I swam and I got to the first boat and started launching the podcast. And I think a lot of the times you're either a beach goer or either you're gonna go and swim in the beach in
Hmm.
the ocean, and that's what entrepreneurship is from my perspective. It's like, oh, all these people are doing it. How did they get there? No, you have to, so
Hmm.
people just think that to become an entrepreneur, like you had that misconception. Oh, you gotta have $30,000. You gotta have all this
Hmm.
market research.
Hmm.
People think about it and like, oh, I don't think it's for me. I don't think I can do it. It's either too much work or I don't know too many people. Who's gonna buy from me? We have all these
Yeah.
self
Limiting beliefs.
yeah, self-limiting beliefs. So
Hmm.
this awesome that you're able to get over that, get out of
Yeah.
it, and then find people, find mentors, find coaches that can help you fill in the blanks. Because I think that's what it is, right? Filling in those
Yes.
blanks that you don't know.
Yes, exactly. It's like, well, I know a certain amount and the other stuff I need help with. And there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with reaching out. Like you said, whether it's picking up a book,
Yeah.
like listening to a particular, like right now I'm studying, a certain part of self-development,
Hmm.
just so that not only just for myself, but because I want to be able to help others with self-development. So
Yeah.
obviously I'm listening to podcasts that are
Hmm.
regarding that kind of thing. And you
Yeah.
can probably tell from some of my posts,
Hmm. I can.
these
Yeah.
little discoveries, and it's super critical because that's exactly what it is. It's filling in the blanks.
Yeah.
There's enough information and knowledge out there that you really don't have to know any of it. You can gather that information along the way as long as you're going to apply it, um, and then look
Exactly.
back and critique or improve. I love that.
Yeah.
You're not going to get to that boat unless you go out and swim. You're just not. There's not really. No one's going to hand it to you on a silver
Nope.
platter.
Nope.
But I think, like, for me personally, because I always like to look back to how somebody is the way they are, and of course you can always relate things back to your early childhood development.
Hmm.
And I look back to my whole life since 5 years old, right up into college. I played soccer,
Yeah.
and I was like center forward or right wing forward.
Hmm.
And when you are constantly involved in a sport that means you have to get around obstacles and you have to be aggressive, that just becomes part of like how you operate, like a mode of operation. And I didn't understand that until just probably the last few years of my life when I started to really look back and go, why was I able to do that? Like, why did I decide to do those things? As far as like having the courage or the confidence, I should say,
Yeah.
because you were training yourself the whole life by being in that sport to have that certain level of confidence.
Yeah. No, that's
You
that's
know,
really, really, really well put because when you're put in a position and you're dependent, like the entire team depends on you to take the ball to the goal.
mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
you are the executioner essentially,
yep,
right? So when you're an
yeah,
executioner, you become that person in the rest of your life and you're able to build that out over time
yep.
and it's beautiful. I love it.
Hmm. And then,
And
like, when you're talking about how you have all these different hobbies and stuff, I love that because that's the artistry. So you're an artist,
mhm.
by trade, I would say, because it's kind of very similar for me. Where, yeah, I went to school for criminal justice. That's what my degree is in. But
Mhm.
halfway through my college, my advisor said, "Are you an art major?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Why are you taking all these art classes?" And I'm like, "Because I like ceramics and I like photography and I like this and I like that." And so then you look back and you're like, yeah, even then
Mhm.
you were exploring the creative world, and your mind has a lot of different likes and wants to explore those things that you like.
Yeah.
So you can take that artist side, that creative side, and bring that in, and you use it as a tool.
Yes.
So if you're a creative person, you're going to use that as a tool in your podcasting and your endeavors.
Exactly. And how
And
you
like, it's like you with your tech, that's an art in and of
mhm.
itself for sure, because
Yeah.
you're getting these results. these compilations, the content, like you said. Content
Yeah,
creation is fun because it is an artistry.
it is. And as human beings, we love working with our hands. And when we're
Mm,
creating, either it be digital or physical, we are technically working with our mind's hands versus our hands, the physical hands. It's beautiful how our mind, and I think
hmm
what it does is it connects our analytical mind with our artistic mind too, because you're applying analysis as you are creating art.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like that. That's good. Should quote that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
that's
good
really
one.
good. um, but yeah, so and then like so I like to restore furniture
Mm-hmm.
as like a hobby.
See,
And
there it is.
yeah, and so I ended up with a storage unit full of furniture and a house full of beautifully restored furniture. But I ran out of things to where to put this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got the bright idea. Well, I'm going to open up like a shop and I'm going to sell this stuff because that's my entrepreneurial side.
Yeah.
But then I was like, wait, I've learned from my current company that I don't want a brick and mortar because I don't want to deal with a brick and mortar. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to deal with a bunch of employees. I don't want to deal with a bunch of insurance stuff. Like, I just don't want to deal with that side of things. I want things to just be like, I can work from home,
Mm-hmm.
because you get
Yeah.
to a certain point and you really just cherish like your peace, and peace becomes kind of the primary
Yeah.
driver.
Yeah.
Kids are getting older. You've been through all this stuff. You just want
Mm-hmm.
like peace and quiet. So yeah, but it's hard because you're like, well, I love to do this. It should just be my next business because I
Mm-hmm.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it. And then you're like, well, let's take a step back. So now it's, once in a while I'll restore a piece of furniture, for something I might really need,
Yeah.
or like a gift for somebody.
Yeah. Gift for somebody. I think the gift part is really key because it's almost like a twofer. You get the fulfillment out of
Yeah.
creating something, but then you also get another dose of fulfillment by giving it away as a gift and lighting
Mm-hmm.
up their day. And I think that's how Santa Claus started. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've
Right.
seen the movie. There's this movie called Klaus, and there's this old man, and he's got tons of creations. And a while ago, his wife and child died, so now he's got all these
Ooh.
toys in his shed, and he's just constantly creating new things. And then this postman had to get his post like letters deliveries up, so he basically
Mm.
wrote he went around talking to children in the town and like, hey, what toy would you like for blah blah blah, and he would take these letters to this guy, and then he would deliver he would deliver these
Huh.
toys. That was a
Nice.
really cool movie. I was like, oh, interesting. So that's where Santa Claus started from. It was
Love
really
it.
cool. It
Yeah.
was really neat.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
at this point, we learned about your journey, what you're passionate about, how you started your journey in launching your
Mhm.
own corporation and company, and
Mhm.
basically you outgrew it, and now you're
Mhm.
out there going to
Mhm.
launch another project,
Yeah.
another entrepreneurship, another endeavor, and
Mhm.
all the best to you. So at
Thanks.
this point of the conversation, we like to ask some really quick questions.
Okay.
What is the one hobby that you wish you got into?
Uh, Quilting.
Quilting.
I know that sounds super girly, but I have a love for fabric. I have a
Hmm.
love for colors and patterns and design.
Yeah.
So I really, really enjoy something like, say, a neutral backdrop like
Hmm.
white, and then being able to add in fabrics. Like, so let's say you have a room that's just like white shiplap, like your
Yeah.
living room,
Hmm.
and then you can add those splashes of color, like a pillow, a blanket. To
Hmm.
me, I don't know, there's just something so calming and like
Yeah.
magical about that. And then you can change it out, as you wish.
Yeah.
But I'm really into color,
Hmm.
so like I just and I like quilts, and I'll go and I'll try and find unique quilts. I like vintage quilts. It's just something that it's like one of those things where you're like, if I had this spare room in my house,
Yeah.
my kids are completely gone. Okay. So my youngest is 12. So I still
Yeah.
have a little ways to go there.
Yeah.
And it's like, then I'm going to buy a machine and I'm going to learn how to quilt. But it's kind of like the furniture thing though. Then what am I
It
going to
is.
do? Have a
Yeah,
whole
then what you gonna
stack
do?
of, yeah, what am I going to do? Sell it. I guess I could do an e-commerce site or
Yeah, you can do
something.
e-commerce. You could do, an Etsy.
Oh, maybe that's what I'll do. I don't know. But
Yeah,
yeah,
because
I think quilting would just be fascinating to have gotten into.
yeah,
But it's hindsight. I don't know. I don't know if that would have turned into anything or not,
you
or
never
if
know.
it
I
still
mean, there
will.
there are huge quilting conventions, like
Mm. Oh
conventions
yeah.
upon conventions that are all around quilting and knitting and whatnot. Talk
Mhm.
about quilting. I actually had a few jeans, denim pants
Mhm.
that got ripped in the crotch area because they're really cheap
Mhm.
material, apparently.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I cut them up and I was like, I'm gonna make a quilt with this. So I have
Oh
them
yeah.
cut up already, but I haven't gotten
Nice.
the time to go and put it together yet.
Yeah, that's
Um,
very Japanese, believe it or not.
Very Japanese to use denim.
Jeans. Yep.
Oh, jeans.
Use denim to make things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all stems from obviously being poor, but
Hmm.
it's now like a total art form, and like
It
people will
is.
pay good money for this stuff.
I
It's
was
fat
actually
in like.
Yeah, I was actually on some website and they had all these ideas for what you could do with your old denim pockets. And there's like a 4x3 um basically thing sewn together with which is all made out of jean pockets, like back pockets.
Mhm.
And you could put like
Mhm.
flowers, you could put things in there.
Oh
I'm like,
yeah, I love it.
that's pretty neat.
Yeah. So as a teenager in the 90s, I'm
Mm-hmm.
dating myself here, but in the 90s, my best friend and I, we used to get pants and we would cut the side of the pants and then sew in fabric
Nice.
down the legs,
Yeah.
down the outside of the legs, and make them wider pants.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Because that
and
was the thing.
and that was the thing. But even then, I was like, I love this because you're
Yeah.
transforming something. You're just making it more interesting and like just
Yeah.
touch the fabric and everything. And so like now, years later, and I'm like on Pinterest going, I like Shashiko stitching. I'm gonna learn how to do that, and I'm gonna make something.
Oh man, that's too funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my mom's a seamstress, and she's been, for
Ooh.
all my life, right? So she's
Ooh.
she's sewing all sorts of things. And right now with her, with her experience, she's been sewing masks to, give away to,
Yeah.
the health workers and whatnot. So
Mhm.
she's probably sewn over 1,000 masks by now.
Oh wow,
It's
that is just
insane.
awesome. That's awesome.
She's gonna
What a
send
cool
some for
lady.
my kids, and she's got
Oh.
like these tiny ones for with unicorns on them, and like my son's like, oh, I want the one with the soccer balls.
Yeah.
It's funny.
That's awesome. What a cool lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it's funny because like when I was doing that stuff back as a teenager, it was just
Hmm.
hand sewing.
Yeah.
So like
So
I
that's
don't
it.
even really know how to use a sewing machine.
Oh, okay.
Not really, not very good. But obviously, if that's something that you were again, this is the lost hobby I never did. So
Exactly. Yeah.
obviously, if I was going to get into it, I would
Yeah.
take some classes,
You'll
like
take
even
some
do them at
classes,
the
Juan
yeah,
fabric and whatnot. They've got those
yeah.
classes.
Yep.
And
So.
so that's really awesome. I love it.
Mhm.
Next question. What did you want to be when you were a child?
Okay, so when I was a child, I wanted to be an archaeologist,
Nice. Kind of like
and
kind of like
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones.
Yep, he was literally my hero for
Yeah.
many years. That character, and I just was obsessed with it for a long time because of the adventure.
Yeah,
And
the
then
adventure.
my father, who is generally the voice of reason in my life, was like,
Mm-hmm.
"You realize you're going to be digging in the dirt all day." And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "You're not going to find the Holy Grail or anything
Yeah.
like that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So then my mind just went to the next more adventurous thing that I could think of. And so I wanted to join the Coast Guard.
Mm.
So I was all signed up to do that. And then my father says, because I was going to graduate high school, take the bus to Albany, and
Yeah.
start.
Yeah.
And he was like, if you go to college first and get your 4-year degree, you can enter in as an officer.
Mm.
I was like, no kidding. And then I went to college, and the rest is history. Long story.
Nice. Nice. He's like,
Yeah.
oh, he's got some words, the ways to, like, okay, you can still do that, but how about you go this way?
Yeah. So like
That's
you
neat.
could see though that like adventure was always my goal.
Yeah.
And I think that that's another reason why it was more easy for me to fall into taking the plunge to be an entrepreneur, because it's that
Hmm.
adventure. It's
Yeah.
like no day is going to be the same. You're not cookie cutter. You're not stamping out something. So yeah, adventure is such a huge thing.
Nice. I love it. Next question. What is your favorite movie or TV show?
So as far as my favorite TV show, would definitely be Seinfeld.
Oh, yes.
I've
We got a
literally
Seinfeld fan,
watched
guys.
every season probably 100 times each, and I'll
Oh,
just never get bored of it. If I'm
oh
really
my
bored,
God.
I'll put it on. But kind of grew up with that. And then as far as like one of my all-time favorite movies of all time is the original Jurassic Park movie.
Nice.
Like I kind of have lines memorized in that movie. I have it all memorized. It's just one of those things that when it first came out, it was so epic,
Yeah.
and just some of the things that they talk about in that first original one is really interesting if you listen to some of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the life will find a way.
Yeah.
That just was like, man, it's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
guess,
we recently watched it with the kids. I think
it's
maybe
so good.
a year ago or so. It's
Yeah,
really good.
so good. But
All
yeah, so
right.
that would be my close second to the Indiana Jones movie.
Nice. Yeah, it's got some Indiana Jones vibe, and it's all
Yeah,
adventure.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Seinfeld, man, you can't go wrong with that. So I
No,
I
you
didn't grow up in
really
the
can't.
I yeah, I didn't grow up in the States. I watched Seinfeld after the fact, um,
Nice.
when I moved here, but I binge watched it, and
Mm.
it was all on DVDs. So I would
Yep.
plug in the DVD. And then I would quote, Seinfeld all the time at work. Like, oh my God, this guy's watching Seinfeld now. But even now, like he is, I regard him. Highly regard the guy. He got this
Mm.
new show, comedians in cars. You
Mm.
know,
Yep.
uh, getting coffee is so creative and so one of a kind. And he's like, "Yep, I started a show, Seinfeld, and people started copying right after it. And like even now, all of the all of the sitcoms are
Mm.
based off of Seinfeld or Friends. They have six
Yep.
main characters, and there's a ton of new shows that are also following the thing
Oh,
that he's doing
absolutely.
with comedians in
Yeah.
cars, which is
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah. I
Um,
think before I got into Seinfeld, I used to watch Cheers, and that was a
okay,
great show.
yeah,
And then it kind of stumbled into the next, and like you said, then it just sort of took off from there. What's
mm-hmm.
interesting about sitcoms? The K-pop group BTS?
Uh-huh. I think I heard of
Yeah.
him.
So yeah, well, they're like worldwide famous now, global idols in the K-pop realm. I have
Yeah.
teenagers at home, so I'm
Okay.
exposed to all this K-pop stuff. I'm sort of like a converted fan now, just by default.
Yeah.
And the lead singer, the orchestrator of the band, the sort of creator, the leader of the band, he learned English by watching Friends in South Korea.
Wow.
Yeah, he taught himself English from watching that. His parents bought him the DVDs.
That's awesome.
Uh,
Actually, I was talking to
fun fact.
another entrepreneur. She teaches English as a second language, and she came up to me and she's like, "Hey, I just thought of something. I can tell my students to listen to podcasts where they have conversations with people of different accents, and they
Mm-hmm.
can learn the language and how words are pronounced."
Yeah,
Like, that's really cool.
that's
So that
amazing.
was really cool. Yeah. All right, next question.
Okay.
What movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
Ooh, that's tough. Probably that's a tough one. One of my all-time favorites is Die Hard with Bruce
Mm-hmm.
Willis.
Yeah.
Not that I want to be a guy, but I love his character.
He's so
I
cool.
like that kind of underdog hero thing
Yeah.
for sure. Like it resonates with, everybody probably, but
Yeah, everybody, yeah.
um, I think like even though he's sort of at first you think of him as more of the immature hero, he turns out
Mm-hmm.
to be pretty mature. He turns out
Yeah.
to be pretty heartfelt guy
Yeah.
where it's really coming from a good place. And like, so that just, it's like, it makes you just like awesome, like in awe.
You know what? That reminds me of what you just mentioned. He's coming from a really good place, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As human beings, we love when we see people like us.
True. When we can
You know,
identify,
when you
right?
can relate, right? If there's a
Mm-hmm.
superhero, okay, I love the superhero, and then they add, like for example, Iron Man, right? So I love that he's got all this tech, but then you
Mm-hmm.
also see all the flaws. Like, oh, he's got these flaws. Oh, I can relate. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what makes superheroes or any hero so relatable, and I think that's what we saw. And now everybody's talking about authenticity and being an authentic leader and blah blah blah. And it's no, everybody is putting that word down. Oh, being
Mm-hmm.
authentic,
Mm-hmm.
be yourself, talk about this, what you're passionate about. And it's funny. It's like back in the days you had to fake it before you make it,
Yeah.
but
Oh
you don't need
gosh.
to fake it anymore.
No, no. And oh man, I'm glad you said that because like literally the first probably like few years of being an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
that's all it was. Fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's really exhausting after a while.
Oh yeah.
Um, and, it works to, it's kind of like the ego thing. It does work to a certain degree. It does
Mhm.
help kickstart a lot of stuff because it forces you to have a vision of something bigger.
Yeah.
So, for my example, we didn't know, I wasn't sure if I was going to try and create something that was a franchise.
Mhm.
So, and then of course, going along with Robert Kiyosaki's methodology, it was always about the bigger picture. I want
Yeah.
employees, everything's going to be turnkey, it's going to be completely systematized. So, even though it wasn't for a long time,
Yeah.
we were able to project the image that it was. So,
Yes.
people would be like, oh, are you a franchise? Like, everything is so cool. And I'm like, nope, but thanks. And that was a total fake it till you make it, like
Yeah.
all day long.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but it's true. You don't have to do that now. You really don't, especially if you're coming from like the standpoint of like a sales professional.
Yeah.
I think, Larry Levine, selling from the
Mhm.
heart. Yeah,
Mhm.
total rock star.
Yeah.
He says it really, really well. He says authenticity is not a light switch; it's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. Oh my god. Just be
And
yourself.
yeah, like
Love it.
you're either going to embrace it wholeheartedly and just come from that place of heart. It's not something you just want to pull out and use because that's fake and people will see through it. It does
Oh
no
yeah.
good.
Oh yeah.
And
We're
I think,
smart human beings.
yeah,
Dogs can
like
see it.
seriously, yeah,
Animals can see
right,
our authenticity.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
That's awesome. All right, next question. Who is your favorite superhero?
Superman.
Nice. He's
Yep,
got a certain thing about him.
yeah, I love Superman. He was always my favorite.
Well, my screen name, and I'm dating myself, everywhere is Super Junaid.
Dice. Yeah, that's
Uh,
awesome.
so, I relate to him a lot, but
Hmm.
I also relate to like the struggles of I mean I think he shows struggle because he's not an outcast, but he's also not of this world, but he is of this world. It's really weird,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dynamics.
I
All right.
think I liked the fact that he was an alien to some degree because
Mm-hmm.
there was that mystical side,
Yeah.
and then the fact that he's just literally the strongest man ever.
You
It was
know,
just cool.
yeah, that is really cool, and thank you for bringing that up. That he's an alien. Well, guess
Hmm.
what? Human beings are aliens to this world,
Yeah, yeah. That's a whole nother podcast episode.
right? That's a whole nother podcast episode. Tune in the next time.
Yep.
Next one, last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. If I was a board game, boy, this is tough. I kind of like the Guess Who.
Guess who?
Yeah, so it's a game that I used to play a long time ago with my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something that's really fun about it because you have to guess. Someone's giving you clues and you have to guess what it is. And so I
Yeah.
think that's just really fun for like so many different levels that it brings you into humor. It brings you into like using your mind like a
Yeah.
puzzle. It sparks all kinds of cool fun. So I don't know. I guess
That's
I would
really
say
cool.
that.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, wow, I love it. Your answers were awesome, dude. I love Seinfeld. I love Indiana Jones and his movies. I mean, I think his latest one where he's in his 60s and he did like,
I
a
know.
new movie. I'm
I
like,
know.
wow, that
Not
was it was just awesome. He just
legend.
continues to keep giving and giving and giving with being Han Solo
Mhm.
and being so many cool things
Mhm.
here. But this has been an awesome conversation, Jennifer. Thank you so much for your time. Till the
Yeah,
next time.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it.
Um,
I'll come back anytime.
yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. And if you need any help with your podcast, let me know. I'm
Oh,
going to
absolutely.
send you a message on how to get into that coffee chat.
Okay.
See you there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Real pleasure.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this Hacks and Hobbies episode. Junaid would love to hear from you, so please leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. Visit hacksandhobbies.com to find additional information on the guest today, as well as the show notes.